Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Can paranormal events follow you all your life? Can a demon be trapped in a mirror? Is there a hell? Well, hello there, and welcome to the 439th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Paul, and Ben, as you know, is probably in the midst of his college commute from Boston, and will, as always, try to call in from the train. If you just heard that weather forecast, it's a pretty decent day. The poor tyke has had nothing but snow, flood, rain, hail during most of his semester, and today's an exception to that, so good for him. We have an unusual guest this evening, not that they're not all unusual, and he is in line with our tradition of talking with people who have had extraordinary and life-changing experiences, but are not necessarily among the big names in paranormal research. And tonight's guest has just written a book about his extraordinary life, A Haunted Soul, a true story of one man's struggle with the paranormal, written by our guest, Jason Dowd, and his co-author, John Greenberg. Jason Dowd was born in Bristol, Connecticut. He graduated from the Land O'Lakes High School in Florida in 1997 and continued his education and training at ITT Technical Institute in Tampa. Though he dabbles in many art mediums, Jason is an award-winning photographer. In 2003, he founded Dowd Studios, and the following year began editing videos for various bands. He has worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry. His art has been displayed in galleries around the nation, and he has made many radio and television appearances. His new book, as I say, Haunted Soul, a true story of one man's struggle with the paranormal. Jason and his wife, Fran, live in Newport Richey, Florida. Jason Dowd, welcome to Behind the Paranormal.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on.
Certainly. Jason, it's hard to know where to begin with you. Why don't you just sort of give us your basic story?
Well, for the paranormal aspect of it, it started in 1986. I was actually born on November 1st, and it was October 31st on Halloween when I had my first experience, and that was over at the Green Lady Cemetery in Burlington, Connecticut.
I know it well.
Ever since, yes, it's a great cemetery, but unfortunately it's been severely abused throughout the years. I mean, I don't even think there's a stone standing anymore, and the last time that there was one standing there, which was it actually was the alleged Green Lady Cemetery's ghost. Her grave, I guess I just heard that it had been stolen. So, you know, if it wasn't haunted before, it's definitely haunted now. But that was my first experience with a ghost, and then it kind of grew on that, because everywhere I went after that, I could see energies, I could feel people's energies, I could see things that I shouldn't have known about people, and that kind of got to me a little bit. And then I got to see other spirits, and I started wondering, gee, do these people see it too? So I kind of like backed away from people. And then in 1993, I had a demonic experience down here in Florida. It was shortly after I moved here. I moved here in 1990. Okay.
All right, let's start at the beginning. I unfortunately did not have a chance to read your book because it arrived relatively late enough so I wouldn't have a chance to read it. And I know that that's nobody's fault. It's just, you know, I have piles of things to read on my desk. And anyway, but I did notice that you do seem to have a very different interpretation of paranormal events than we do. And I don't question your experiences or those of any other guest, because you were there and we weren't, so who knows. And we could certainly be wrong in our interpretation. But let's start with the Green Lady Cemetery. Now, I found out about that through my old mentors, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are well known, particularly on the East Coast, as probably the grandfather and grandmother of modern, quote-unquote, ghost hunting, unquote. And, you know, what one can interpret their actions and methods and theories in many ways, but which I will not attempt to do here, but that's how I heard about it. These cemeteries, as you say, unfortunately have great histories very often and are abused because people find out or think that they're haunted or this kind of thing. Here in Rhode Island, we had the vampire incidents of the 1800s and early, the 1700s, which actually were cases of I don't know, in my opinion, sort of misinterpreted medical conditions. But stones have been stolen and everything, as you say. So, getting the Green Lady Cemetery, I believe it's in Burlington, Connecticut.
Yes, correct,
yeah,
but right
okay.
on the border.
All right, so tell us, let's start by you telling us about your first experience, and that was in that cemetery. What exactly happened?
Well, at first unfortunate that I didn't really realize what type of haunting it was. I was still kind of young, so I didn't really know any of the stories, and none of my family really believed in hauntings at all. So they never talked about it. They just told me it was allegedly haunted. And when I was there, I actually saw a green mist of a figure just turn itself into like this vintage woman. I mean, from like the 1700s or early 1800s. Didn't say anything. Wasn't a scary ghost at all. Actually, it was very pleasant. And but it kind of startled me because you see something that you shouldn't be seeing and you're kind of in shock.
Sure.
And then it came up to the wall that I was outside of this wall. And as it got up to the wall, it disappeared. It pointed at me and just disappeared. And I never saw the ghost again.
What makes you think... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The other thing that has happened to me, because I used to go back there all the time to try to find it again, is that I would get like this blood rush feeling. The feeling like you're kind of like in a daze. You got that dizzy feeling, and you're just a not right feeling. And I would get that the minute I would walk into that wall. Walks across the wall to go into the cemetery, and it would not leave until I physically left the cemetery wall. Once I did that, then I felt better. But there's been a lot of stories about the different sightings. There's been about 4 or 5 different sightings, but everybody seems to have. There's been a lot of each particular story to kind of back it up.
Okay. What did this figure look like? Was she wearing clothes, or could you see a human? As you say, vintage. So obviously, she was wearing clothes. All right. Yeah,
she was wearing very, very. It's kind of hard to describe, but if you were to look at kind of like a Les Miserables or something like that, something very period to the time. She had like a long dress on. It was very, dignified. She had a hat on. Like a bonnet, and just very, very classy. Like the long hair, but it was kind of like in pigtails, I guess you could say. The ones the curly hair that comes down to the side and falls to the side of your face and stuff like that for a woman back then.
All right. One of the questions we always ask, and we're probably the only ones asking this lately, anyway, although it seems to be spreading. When I would have experiences like that, and I've been at this for 42 years, starting when I was in the seminary, which did not endear me to the seminary authorities, I began to ask myself, why are we seeing these people in clothing and, in physical forms and doing daily things even sometimes, when if they are really the spirits of dead people as opposed to the actual people themselves in a parallel time or world? Has that thought ever occurred to you? What makes you think this was the spirit of a dead person? Or is that the only explanation?
There's a couple things that it could be. I mean, it could very well be a residual haunting. This was her yard at one point in time.
Yeah, so I was going to say that.
To her there.
Yeah.
So that's a different thing. Whereas most cemeteries I go to, I don't really get anything at all, and so that's why people say, well, why would they want to be with their bodies? But sometimes, if there is like a murder or something that happens where they die suddenly and they don't really know that they're dead, there could be that they stay connected to their body because they don't understand. But that's only a theory. That's nothing that I can say, okay, that's 100%, correct. We don't know what happened. But on the other hand, this could be very well a residual haunting because she actually lived at the place for a while. This was her backyard. Her house was just on the other side of where she was buried. And then there's also a theory behind her that she was murdered. They found her at a swamp around just a little ways away from her house. From what I have read, everybody thought she was a very gifted swimmer. So for her to just be floating in this water, dead from drowning, does not make sense. They didn't really have your type of autopsies like they have today.
Right.
So, there was really no cause of death. There's no strangulation marks. There was no bruises. There's nothing on her body to show that there was a struggle. So they can only prove that she was drowned. But I guess from what I read in this other book, Haunted Connecticut, which kind of showed a whole bunch of different theories and stuff, they said that upon her husband being buried next to her is when all this started to happen. So there's a possibility. That's why people were starting to say, and I guess in life, when he was alive, people were questioning his his motives and if he had any involvement to it at all. Which, you know, if he did physically kill her and he was laid next to her, that could cause that energy to manifest itself, trying to tell everybody, hey, look, this is who's doing it, and I'm stuck here. I can't rest in peace.
Well, I don't know. I never found those theories to be good enough. And ironically, I was one of the early advocates of this residual haunting theory. And for those who don't know, residual haunting is generally considered, I think it's something people fall back on because they can't explain things any other way. But it's supposed to be some sort of recording on the environment, and it's played back again and again and again if your brain, which is somewhat like a radio, can pick up the signals of past events, that kind of thing. But I began to question that in 1971, actually. During probably my first case, and all these things were taking place. We'd see things like this, Jason. We'd hear all sorts of things, and I say we. I'm talking myself and 5 other seminary students and a photo expert. And I began to question a number of things recorded on what. The only thing that was there that had been there at the time were maybe some rocks. The trees were all different. The soil wasn't even at the same level it was 200 years before. You know, that sort of thing. So I began to evaluate other experiences that were taking place in my work, and it seemed that the only thing that really adequately explained it was a sort of a quantum physics approach, that these are the real people in bodies and all in parallel worlds where those times are still taking place, because all possibilities and probabilities exist in that theory. Maybe that's wrong, but that's always been the best way I've found to explain why these things are happening. And and personally, and again, you were there and I wasn't in this particular case, but I just don't think it's adequate. All these people dying and trying to tell people something and all this. Yeah, maybe. But it's interesting that she seemed to notice you in this first experience, and you say she pointed to you. I found that in many, many cases, that these entities, these people think that we're ghosts haunting them because we're half in their world, they're half in ours, and they see us like a ghost too. Did you ever get any impression of that kind, or is that a possibility, or no?
Oh, I believe that could actually be a possibility. I mean, at the time I was only about 7 to 8 years old, so I really didn't understand it. And ever since I have understood more of the paranormal realm, it never happened to me again. So I could never prove that it was an actual residual type of haunting where the same thing happens over and over again. I have gone there many, many times, and I continue to go there as much as I possibly could. And then I moved to Florida, and so for me to get up there, even as a child, it was not the most economical thing for me to do. So when I did go up in 2008, I did try to get everything to happen to me again, but it never did.
Yeah, if you try, it never happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I can only go by with what I saw. I don't actually know what it was. I've been trying to make sense of it since I was, since it happened in 1986, 1987.
No, I respect that.
So I mean, I don't really have a true, this is what it is, this is what happens, because I've never been able to, I've never had the equipment to go up there and investigate it. I can only read what other people saw, and I actually had other people say the same thing that I did.
Sure, yeah.
So, that kind of backs me up that I'm not completely losing it, I didn't just see it and making it up. So that's what I was thinking for so many years, because I didn't have anything to go by. And everybody kept telling me, you know what, ghosts don't exist, this doesn't happen, you shouldn't be talking about this. So, but until the internet really came around, I really thought I was going insane.
Yeah.
And then when I saw that book, I was like, man, there are more than 10 to 15 people that saw the exact same thing I did.
Oh, it's well known,
So yeah, that definitely has something to back it up. I just really wish that I was up in that area, because you know what? Now that I have the equipment, I would be there every day. I would be trying to. I mean, that was one of the coolest places I had to go to when I was little. I'd go up there and get the gravestone rubbings, because there were some really interesting people that were buried there, and some very old graves, and the types of epitaphs that they have. It was just really neat to be in. So, that's probably where I'd spend most of my time if I was up there today, and I would definitely be doing a lot more investigations there.
Well, that maybe, I'm sure that's the case, because in the old days, the most equipment we had was an old not a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I don't go quite that far back, but an old cassette recorder and a couple of cameras. I don't know. So you put some stock in the gadgetry that's commonly used. I don't think people really understand it, and I don't know. What say you on that?
Well, as far as EVPs and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to disprove that, because you are getting something there, but sometimes they're so faded it is hard to understand, and then you kind of wonder, was that just something that's coming through, many distances away? Maybe you're picking up something that you shouldn't have been picking up, just a conversation. It's kind of hard to really tell. But on the other hand, like cold spots and and electromagnetic fields and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to prove, because we don't actually know that that's a spirit. It's just a theory. And when something kind of floats around with an EMF or something like that, and you get these weird readings and stuff like that, it has some validity to it, but I can't prove that that's a spirit.
Well, I don't even know if I believe in spirits in that sense in most worlds. I don't know. I think, again, we're dealing with because I've had physical altercations with poltergeists and things like this, things that are just too physical to for the old, 19th century spiritualist ideas to explain it, in my opinion. Just before we leave the subject of residual hauntings, one of the reasons I kind of reject that theory today, and that might be wrong of me, there's no reason why there couldn't be such things. I mean, all things, if they're conceivable, they're possible, is that I've managed to interact with things that were reputed to be residual hauntings, and I've managed to change them. And the opposite of a residual haunting is supposed to be what is known in the parlance as an intelligent haunting. In other words, the thing, which is more than just a recording; it's an actual entity. But I mean, I just have my doubts about it. But anyway, moving on to the notion of cemeteries. I have usually found cemeteries, because there are cemeteries and there are cemeteries. I've usually found them to be very peaceful places, and I particularly enjoy the ones here in New England with the old epitaphs and things like that. And being a historian under another hat, I'm interested in the people. What were they like? How they were really like us, in some ways not, in others, and all this business. But when you're in the presence of a dead body, even if it's just at a wake or something, the person's not there. It's just, and I don't know why anybody would hang around a cemetery. I've never really found that. I found that what they're hanging around, in my experience, is the places they used to live. And again, they're not hanging around. They're still there, still living there. That's my experience. And I'm thinking of several other cemeteries in Connecticut. So anyway, those are just thoughts. So, you can comment on that if you wish, or then we can move on to the notion of the demonic event that happened to you.
Well, see, that's what I like about the ability to investigate, because of the fact that you were actually able to work with something that was considered residual, and it actually became something maybe a little bit more intense.
No, in my opinion.
So that's why I like the ability of really investigating things, because I don't believe that every place that I see is haunted. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that a lot of these orbs are considered spirits and everything like that, which is also kind of like a residual. Everybody says, "Oh, there's an orb, so guess what? It's a ghost." Well, we can't prove it's a ghost. Well, so that's another thing that I have dealt with. But I also believe that a lot of times I've been to cemeteries, they're very, 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 very peaceful. I had one here that it was kind of a weird thing, because I walked in the place when I was in my junior year of high school, and it's not the greatest little cemetery. I mean, it's got like maybe 15 stones in it and stuff like that, but it's very peaceful. But this one particularly kept calling me, and I didn't understand why. And I picked up the paper in November of last year, right after my birthday, and found that in this particular cemetery, there was somebody that was killed by, it was like kind of like a what's that famous feud that was going on in Tennessee area?
Oh, the Hatfields and the McCoys?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very similar to that, and this guy had been killed, and his father carved this curse on the back of his cemetery stone.
Nice guy.
And it was to curse the other people. So, I mean, that one kind of brought me back there, and I could never understand why, but I couldn't really read the stone because it was very old. It's just like the one from the ones up in New England. It was, it's kind of like a lime rock, and it was really faded, so it was really hard to read it, and I never could understand
the sandstone.
What it was. Yes.
Oh, that in the Connecticut Valley. That's terrible. I have my ancestors. I can't even read their stone.
Exactly. So, I mean, I could kind of see that there was something written there, but I didn't know what it said, and then one of the living relatives said that this is what happened here. So that kind of brought it back to where there's like a different energy in that particular cemetery. But even some of the most wicked cemeteries that look scary up there, I always found to be very, very peaceful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that's fine. Well, let's move on from that. Now, I'm curious about this demonic experience. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, this is something that really kind of happened to me when I was in one of my lowest points of my life. I had just gotten over this horrendous case of chickenpox. The doctors actually wanted to hospitalize me, and the school wouldn't let me back into school for about 2 months because I looked so bad. The other thing that I was going through a confirmation class with my religion. I was going to be confirmed with the Lutheran religion, and my parents were also divorcing at the same time, and I was just getting ready to get out of 8th grade, going into 9th grade. So there's a lot of transition, a lot of weird things going on in my life. So this is the perfect chance for anything like this to happen because you're weakened and you're happy, you're down, you're high. Everything that could have happened to you was happening to me at this point in time. So what ended up happening was it started off with just a shadow, and the shadow, it just gave you this worst feeling I've ever felt in my life. I mean, it was just like pure hatred, and it would come out at nighttime. It was sitting in my room, and then it would just kind of disappear in the morning time. And as time grew, it started to get a little bit more interactive with me. I was waking up with letters carved on my chest. I was waking up with hand marks around my neck that were actually bigger than my hand and bigger than my father's hand. I was having tremendously large scratch marks down my back. I was having nightmares. It was really getting bad. And then it got to the point where the thing actually picked me up and choked me one night. It was like holding me up against the wall to the point where I couldn't breathe. I really thought I was going to die, and there's nothing I could do to fight it. I didn't know. I couldn't reach out and grab this thing and fight back. And then then I fell back on my bed, thought I was going to die, and then when I had almost no energy, it did it again, and then it put me down, and then I got to the point where I just fell asleep because I was too weak from this torment.
And you would have been 11, 12 years old maybe at this time?
Yeah, I was just around 13. I was actually a little bit older because when I started school up there I was 5, but down here you had to be almost 6.
Okay.
So when I came down here, they held me back a year. And I never told anybody, but everybody saw a lot of the stuff that was on me. And my friends actually encountered the same thing too. And I had a friend that I brought over. I completely said and went against my own will that, or my better judgment, that I would bring my friends over. And one time I decided to bring him over for a sleepover. This kid was about 6'3" and almost 250 pounds at the time, and he was and it was mostly muscle. And he was in 8th grade. And he saw the thing, and I said, just ignore it. And he's like, I can't ignore it. He goes, how are you making this shadow? How are you doing this? And it really was getting him upset because he thought I was playing a trick on him. So I said, it's not me. I said, look, I'm waving my hands. It's not doing anything. He goes, I don't know how you're doing that. So he threw a shoe at it to see what would happen. And when that thing hit, it threw him up against the wall, choked him out, and then threw him down on the ground just like it did me. And then when I really realized this thing's got some sheer power, because it not only did that to me, but this kid is like twice my size. At that point in time, I was maybe 110 pounds wet, and I was about 5'6" if I was, give or take an inch. And this kid just towered over me, and it threw him around like it was nothing. And that really scared. That was where it really got a little bit scary. And then after that, what it was starting to do, it was just starting to talk to me, and it wanted me to do some bad things to my parents and do some bad things to my friends. And I just got to the point where none of my friends even wanted to come over, because a lot of them experienced it, not necessarily to that extreme like what my friend did, but they experienced some things too, and they didn't want to come over anymore.
Did they ever experience these things in their own homes or just your house?
Just my house.
Okay. Can you describe the house and where it was located?
Yeah, originally this was in Lake Padgett East, which is in Land O'Lakes, Florida. It's just a little bit north of Tampa and Hillsborough County. And the history of the place was it was mostly orange groves at the time, but there was a lot of Seminole Indians that lived in the area, so there was a lot of things that, a lot of the settlers that would come down from the north to get to Tampa would cut through Land O'Lakes to get there. So there was a lot of ambushes and stuff like that. Now, was there a Civil War or a Seminole War or anything like that happened on there? I don't know. I never found like any arrowheads or anything like that, but there is a possibility that was there. That could have been sacred land. I just don't know.
Well, that may or may not be relevant. You know.
Exactly. And then there was a girl that was killed in front of my house, not in front of it, but like a couple houses down, like maybe 2 houses down. She was walking home from school one day. She was not a very liked person, and somebody had run her over maliciously with their car about 4 years before I moved in there. So that could have had something to do with it, may not have had something to do with it. I'm not 100% sure. But I know that the house is kind of like is maybe 1,300 square feet total. It was pretty new. It was built in 1980 something. I think like 83 it was built. So it was kind of new at the time when I moved in there, about 10 years old.
Okay. Actually, Jason, we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. We'll be right back with Jason Dowd. Stay with us.
April is Business Month on ON 1240 WOON Woonsocket Radio. Each weekday, we will spotlight a different local Blackstone Valley business. Keep track of the different businesses on your own, or pick up the Valley Breeze and use the convenient calendar in the WOON ad. It's your chance to win $200, $100, or a $50 shopping spree at one of the participating businesses. At the end of the month, mail the list of businesses to WOON Radio, 985 Park Avenue, Woonsocket, Rhode Island, 02895, or bring your list to the station, or email the list to joe@woonsocketradio.com. We will choose 3 correct entries to win the shopping sprees. ON 1240 WOON Woonsocket Radio salutes our local businesses with our ON 1240 WOON Business of the Day Spotlight during the month of April. ON 1240 WOON reminds you to always buy local.
All right, and we're back already, Behind the Paranormal, and we're talking to Jason Dowd, author of A Haunted Soul, a true story of one man's struggle with the paranormal. Now, Jason, getting back to this demonic activity here, something we would refer to as a parasite attack, I would say more or less, in my experience anyway, that you were probably, being the age you were and with all the ducks lined up, you might have been ringing the dinner bell for one of these things. Tell me about your family. Have they a history of psychic abilities or paranormal experiences or UFO, anything you can think of? Is that something that goes back in your family at all?
It kind of does, but I didn't really know it at the time. I never talked about it, and neither did my parents. But later on, I realized that my mom had actually been a little bit more sensitive to things, and she was like that from like the 1970s and stuff like that. They actually went to one of the colleges out in I think it was East Hartford or West Hartford. I'm not sure. And they took a picture, and they actually caught this face inside. It was not like a made out of the branches. It was an actual gray face in this Polaroid, and they actually sent that to the Warrens a while back. And then my mom and my dad went to it's called Jones's Antiques up in Massachusetts, and they bought a bed. And when my mom brought that bed home and they started sleeping in it, the first night that they were there, she kept feeling like something was like squeezing the life out of her and screaming in her ear, and she just couldn't sleep. So my dad got rid of the bed, got rid of the problem. So I think my mom has a lot of sensitive abilities to it. As far as psychics, I believe that some people may have been like that on my father's side, but my father's side is very tight-knit too, so I don't really know too much about my father's side of the family, except for maybe my grandfather. I mean, I know what they've done, and I know who they've been in life, but I mean, as far as talking about stuff like that, they never really were very open to that kind of thing.
Well, the reason first of all, let me pause right now to give everybody our phone numbers. I always forget to do that, and people think we don't take calls, but we do take calls. If you'd like to talk to Jason or myself this evening, it is 800-449-1240 from the U.S. and Canada, or locally 401-766-1240. So call in if you'd like and ask Jason some questions. So, Jason, the reason I ask about your family is because very often I run into these parasitical or demonic entities, as they're popularly called, that have sort of fed off certain families for generations. And also separate maybe from that is the idea that I've found too that is well known, that the so-called psychic abilities will sometimes run in families as well. Ben and I look at Ben's abilities, and I look back with some bit of trepidation that we're direct descendants of Hyeno, the Wampanoag, Sachem, and probably the most prominent shaman on the East Coast in the early colonial times, so I don't know. Anyway, that's the reason I asked that. Now, as far as other events, have you yourself ever had other paranormal experiences? We find that they're related. Popularly, ghost, demonic, even UFO stuff, and it's all kind of related. Have you ever had a UFO, a Bigfoot experience, anything like that?
I wish.
No, you don't.
I don't know about UFOs. I mean, I'm kind of on the verge of them, but it seems like every time I've ever talked to the people that they have it, it's like only certain people see it, and I don't understand why. But that doesn't mean that
that's because of the parallel world thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of like to be able to see that. I would kind of like to see it. I don't know if wouldn't want to be like sucked up into one, but I would like to see one, and just to say that I have.
Yeah.
I've searched for Bigfoot, but I've never found a Bigfoot.
Nor have I.
I have actually.
I think I know some.
For one of the,
yeah.
They have these things down here called swamp monkeys, and they're supposedly gas, but I don't know. I mean, I've never seen one. There's been a lot of swamps down here, but I've never seen one running around. But that's a little bit of that cryptozoology and stuff. But as far as other paranormal experiences, I have had some. In fact, I've had a lot after my friend died and after my grandmother died. It took me a little while, but eventually my grandmother started to come to me. But when she started to come to me, it was a little bit more for help, not so much just because she's with me or anything like that, or like I'm in her house. But she was actually coming to me and giving me the type of comfort and advice that I needed, which actually panned out to be good advice.
Oh yeah, they're very positive experiences sometimes when these things occur.
Exactly. I mean, I love when my grandmother comes and sees me. I mean, me and my grandmother were very close in life, and it killed me that she died. But I knew she was so sick that it didn't bother me as much as it should have, because I knew she was happy and healthy. And I watched her sit here and suffer and just wither away before everybody's face, and I knew she was in complete pain. So in many ways, I wasn't trying to hold on to it and be selfish, because I knew that she needed to be where she needed to be healthy. But it did kill me, because I do miss her talks. I do miss being with her and learning from her and watching her smile and stuff like that. Those are the things I really do miss from my grandmother.
Sure. Now, getting back to this negative experience, this negative entity with throwing people against the wall and all the business, did the rest of the family notice this? Was there poltergeist activity attached to this, or what? Just you and your friends?
It really didn't do too much to anybody else in the family, but it was, my parents are going through a divorce, and I truly believe that it was working that type of an angle, like it was trying
I think you're right.
My parents up.
Probably.
And, they may have not been able to see it because they were so wrapped up in what was going on there. My brother was never around, and he was, always out with his friends, but he did see some things that happened in my room, where, like, one time he came in thinking that that I was sleeping in bed, and when he went to go touch my covers, they collapsed down, because they actually had like a body, like a shape of like somebody laying there on their side. And after that never happened to him again. But they all saw the letters on my chest, and they kept asking me why I kept doing that, and they kept thinking that I was self-mutilating myself, out of frustration, and I wasn't.
When you say these things were carved on your chest, could you explain that? I mean, what carved with what? It actually gouged into the flesh and pain and all this business? What?
Ironically, I never felt anything. I would wake up with it, but it looked like somebody took a knife and just drew a letter in my chest, and it was different letters all the time. It was never like a specific letter, like an A or an M or anything like that. They had different letters. And it was never constant. So, I may have one week and not go 2 weeks without anything, and then that third week that comes up, I'd have two letters carved in at two different times. But it would go away almost as fast as it would appear. So, like, if it happened on a Monday, by like Tuesday night, it was gone.
Well, that's funny. I'm too glad you didn't write them down, because I've been addressed by these things in Latin, Greek, Egyptian, Sumerian, French, English, and even Malay. So from one case to another, well, it really wasn't, because a lot of it there was possession involved. It was not a pleasant experience. Sure. But in any case, what was the duration of this event? Now, did it end?
It did end eventually. It started towards the end of my 8th grade year. So I'm going to say it was probably around like December or January of 93, and it ended right before I started ninth grade in 94.
Okay. Now, how about subsequent to this? Obviously you don't live in the same house, do you?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't live in that same house anymore. We moved shortly after my parents divorced, and so that happened in 94, early 95. But this was actually gone before that happened.
Okay. Did anything happen after you moved? I mean, did these things persist in your life?
I was actually able to see a little bit more energy from people, and I was actually, I could actually walk down the street, and I can tell when I'm near somebody that's just not pure of heart or they have malintentions. I was actually able to see auras, and I was actually able to read people a little bit more intensely than I ever had before, and that really kind of freaked me out because I didn't like that. I go into a room and if I shook somebody's hand, I would know everything about them, and I'm like, man, I can't do this. I didn't want to do this, and I actually thought I was possessed from it afterwards.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Yeah.
But come to find out, it really wasn't a possession that happened to me. It just the energy and the ability that I went through, I think, actually just enhanced a natural gift that I already had.
Well, that could very well be true. I find that these what we refer to as psychic abilities are actually survival instincts that were present with our ancestors. That without which we probably would never have survived as a species. Just as an animal would know that something's watching it or it's being preyed upon or something like this. It's the same thing with people, I think. As I say, I don't think our species would have survived its infancy if we'd had not had those abilities. And now when they come out, we're all, whoa, But anyway, okay. And I'm going to give a bit of a disclaimer here. Ben and I always advise people not to go out and seek these things. Everybody's into ghost hunting, a term that I detest, by the way, and all this business, and as if we're collecting butterflies or something, and it is the dumbest, most dangerous thing you can do. If the paranormal comes to you, that's one thing. But if to go and seek it out is something that Ben and I really advise against. So as we talk here, don't start making plans to run to a local cemetery. That's my advice anyway. All right, so what did this do to you? Oh, yeah, I know what I want to ask you about. This mirror business. What was that about with this entity?
Well, see, that's what was really interesting because when this was going on and when it finally settled down, I actually had one of the greatest dreams I've ever had, and it was almost to the point where I had to really question myself to see if this is real. I'm like, did this really happen? Because it was so real. I could smell everything, I could feel everything, and I never forgot it. Mm-hmm. And what it was is this girl appeared to me in the mirror, and she actually became one of my best friends. And I had an instant attraction to her. I mean, it was just like a sister or a friend or something like that just really, I really wanted to be around with this person. So in the dream, what I did is I figured out, she said that she was cast in there by her parents. I'm like, well, how could your parents do that, unless they were witches? And I said, can you break this spell? She goes, no. But she goes, what you can do is, come to this mirror all the time. So what I did is I went out and got another mirror. I said, can you appear in here? And she did. And I took her around. We became the best of friends. And it was like that connection that I needed.
Now, how old were you when that happened?
That was right after the demon experience before I moved out of that house. So that was probably, I was like 13. And so actually when I woke up, I actually went out and got a Lake George, I had a Lake George mirror that I bought when I was younger and went camping up there. And it had like a little sleeve in it. I carried it everywhere. And I always tried to look in this thing to see if I could see this spirit, because I'm like, man, I really want to see this. And it never happened again, but it was probably the happiest place I've ever been to. I mean, I actually felt whole for the first time. And I went through my entire life feeling like something was missing. And it finally made sense to me later on down the line. And in 2010, I got my answer of what that ghost was.
Okay, what was the answer?
Well, when I was born a twin, and I did not know I was a twin. And I was actually a fraternal twin. I had a twin sister. And from the time when I was very young, I knew what it felt like to be buried in a casket, and I shouldn't have known that. I knew what it smelled like. I knew what it felt like. I knew how cold it was, and I knew what the sound felt like, and that freaked me out. And after the demonic
entity
that I fought with, this girl appeared to me and was comforting me. And I believe it was the first time when my spirit on Earth was actually able to touch this other spirit in this other world. It was the first time she was able to communicate with me. And I had talked to a lot of psychics afterwards that told me that I had a sister, and that she was trying for years to communicate with me, but never really knew how to break that down, because I was trying to block out all these other things that I could talk to and see spirits, and she was trying to use that to talk to me. So, I went through my life always wondering what this missing void was in my life, and then all of a sudden, everything made sense, and I didn't feel whole. I didn't feel like I had a hole anymore. I actually felt, complete. I felt like I could touch the world, and my whole entire life finally made sense to me. And ever since then, I was actually able to see this girl again, and I have been able to communicate with her for many, many years.
That's extremely interesting. It's also rather common. I'm dealing with a case of that right now in my own family. Now, it's interesting that when you saw and communicated with her, she was the same age as you, right?
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't a newborn baby. Did
she was not.
Okay. So, this again is more arrows on the quiver, in my opinion, of the idea that you're not dealing with a dead person. You're dealing with somebody in a world in which she never died and in which she's very aware of her brother. That's exactly what we're dealing with right now. Very interesting. And it's still relatively common. But I always advise you have to take steps to make sure that what you're dealing with is really what it claims to be, especially in the wake of the negative and demonic experience that you had before that. Now, again, you're the only one who can answer that. But I always advise, just don't, as it says in the letter to John, don't believe every spirit. Actually, in Greek it says don't believe every spirit. In English it's usually translated don't trust every spirit. So anyway, but take that for what it's worth, which is I think quite a bit. So, but that's extremely interesting. So you have an ongoing relationship.
Yes, I do, and it has taken a lot of time, because I didn't want to just jump in to believe everything. I knew that there was always a possibility this thing could come back, and like everybody says, demons follow you. So just moving away from your house isn't going to take care of the problem. So I was a little skeptical about that, but in 2009, though, it kind of made sense a little bit more, because I actually had a hypoglycemic coma, and I actually passed away. That happened when I was in my car, and it was like over 100 degrees, like 120, 130 degrees.
That would kill me without any kind of coma. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and so I was like, I could actually see myself dying. I could feel myself dying, but there's not a thing I could do about it, because I had complete senses of everything that was going on, but my body wouldn't work. And I actually cooked myself to death. So I know what it feels like to be an animal or a baby that's trapped inside their car with the windows rolled up in the dead of summer. I know what it feels like. And I eventually passed away. And when I came into this other world, I was confronted by this girl. She goes, "You're not supposed to be here yet." She goes, "I cannot let you go through." And I said, "Well, I want to be here. This seems so much better." But it was like looking into my own eyes. Mm-hmm. And she grabbed me and she brought me. She goes, "Everything will make sense later." And then I was brought back, and I woke up outside of the car. The car was still locked. The keys were still in the ignition, and I was outside the car. No windows were broken. I don't know how it happened. It had to be a guardian angel, because there's no physical way that I could have walked out of that car without changing anything and having all the doors still locked. Mm-hmm. But when I woke up, about 6 months later is when I found out I had a twin sister. And so that was like the first time I actually got to see her, because I'm sitting there looking at her, and it was the same girl in the mirror, and she actually brought me back to life to say, "Look, you can't be here yet. You have other things to do." Very
interesting. Everything you've described is very beautiful. Except for the demon.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're classic multiverse experiences in our opinion. You're dealing with real people and all this kind of thing, and forget the spiritualism, because that's not what it's about, in our opinion. But that's really interesting. We very often run into siblings and children who were never born in this reality or realm, but were in many others, and the love kind of overcomes all that, and the connections remain. people meet my wife and I, and we have the two sons, Ben and his older brother, and they say, "Oh, you have 3 children, don't you?" And we would have, but for a very tragic miscarriage early in our marriage, and but we do have 3 children. We feel the presence, and we're going to name him Gregory, and we still say that Gregory is there, and we feel him around, and he kind of helps and takes. He's wherever he's doing it from is a world where he's aware of us, and those connections remain. And when you get down to the whole thing, we really are one another, not just in our families, but quite literally throughout the biosphere. And that's the great thing about the paranormal. I think it's sort of a key to understanding that. So, okay, actually, before we run out of time here, I wanted to give you a chance, Jason, to talk about the book and website and where people can find out more about you. Because you're a very well-known artist and photographer as well.
Yes. Actually, the book came about because a lot of the things with the paranormal that I was dealing with, I was bringing out in the artwork and trying to picture for people what I was actually seeing. Like the death to yesterday it was a dream that I experienced after my best friend had committed suicide. And people are like, "Why is this so dark?" And I'm like, "It's really not. You're not looking through it the way you should be." And that's what way a lot of the stuff that happens in life is. We see something, but we don't look into it to see the real meaning behind it. And that was one of the things I was trying to come through. And I'm like, well, as opposed to trying to explain everything, to a million different people at different times, how about I write a book about it? And it was to take some pieces of my artwork that told a story to help them understand why I got to this point. So that's really what the book was all about. The book has some of my artwork. It walks into my paranormal, and it explains the dream that I was buried alive, the death to yesterday, the Green Lady Cemetery experience, the girl in the mirror, and the demonic experience and how I got rid of it. So that's pretty much what the whole thing was, and how I got to where I am today with the artwork and the paranormal investigating, and my intense intrigue over the paranormal.
All right, and what's your website?
My website is Dowd Studios, DOWDSTUDIOS.com. You can get the book there. You can see all my work, and I'm starting a new line of artwork, which is going in the vintage style. I love vintage photography, and I'm trying to recreate it as much as I can because I truly believe it's a lost art and it's a lost time when things were really, different. And to me, it brings comfort. Mm-hmm. So I hope people will enjoy them.
Good, very good. Okay, we've still got some time. I wanted to go back to a question that we were talking about before, and that's the mirror again. And I found a lot of strange things about mirrors. I think probably because they affect our consciousness. But unless I'm mistaken, I think you mentioned in the book, as I was able to glance through it, that there was a point where there's a demonic entity trapped in a mirror. And we heard about your sister, a very positive experience from a mirror. Am I wrong about that? Was there an experience you had with a demonic entity in a mirror, or am I misreading
No, when I actually fought the demon, and it actually went away really easily, which kind of shocked me, but I used the Bible. And when I used the Bible, it was, to me, I pushed the Bible up against the wall where the shadow was, and the thing just went right through me, and it went right, I could feel it go right through my foot into the floor. And it was the most intense feeling I had ever had. I'd never felt that much hate, pain, agony, and whatever when this thing went through me. And then what my perception was with the artwork was the demonic entity was my sister was helping me fight it on the other side.
Yeah, I often see that, ancestors helping.
And so what I did was I used a mirror because I couldn't really duplicate everything getting sucked into a Bible where I was shooting this thing. So I improvised, and the Bible was the mirror. And I've done a lot of research on things. People actually draped things over mirrors because if somebody had died in the house because they didn't want the soul of the lost one to see themselves in the mirror and get trapped. There's a lot of different angles about that.
All right.
But when this thing got trapped in there, that's what I used to portray the Bible.
Okay, interesting. So, as sensitive as you are, did you, when you were in the presence of this demonic or negative or parasitical entity, did you get the impression that it was alien in the sense of non-human, human, something different? What sort of being did you feel that this was?
Well, it actually showed itself to me one time, and it actually looked like a GQ model with a little bit of a nub on its head. If you were walking down the street, it actually looked like somebody would trust 100%. But it was completely evil in its own right.
Interesting.
And I truly believe that, because it's like, if you were to go pick up somebody on the side of the street, who would you pick up? Somebody that's in a suit that looks really respectable, or the guy that looks like he could be an axe murderer? So, if it's trying to manipulate me and get me to do things I didn't want to do, it's not going to come at me with its most intense form, but it was not human. I knew it was not human.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because that's what we find too, that in these parasite cases, they often will manifest, or something will manifest around them that looks like something, as you say, very innocent and very non-threatening. Like, and there are certain, if you want to call them archetypes or common motifs in these cases, such as the little blonde girl or the little blonde girl with flowers in her hair. I mean, what could be more non-threatening than that? I've run into that time and time again. There's also the guy in the checkered shirt who seems relatively benign. I've run into that. And I think you touch on something that's kind of interesting there, that these things, they're there to eat, they're there to push buttons and feed off your energy, and they'll do it in any way that they can. Annoyance, I don't know, it's really, really interesting. So how about in recent times? Has this stuff sort of pursued you further, or do you continue to have experiences? I don't know if you have children, but if you do they have experiences? What's going on lately?
I don't have children. I wish I did, but in this time and age, it's probably best I don't, because I don't know if I want to bring one in here, but that's another story. But the second part is that, yes, I continue to have experiences. I've walked into people's houses and I've been able to just say, look, you got this, and this here, and they kind of knew it, and even telling me anything about it, I was able to describe it. I had actually walked into another house down here. It's called the May Stringer House, which is really interesting to look at if you get a chance. It's over here in Brooksville. A little 2-year-old girl had passed away. The entire family was actually wiped out from malaria, tuberculosis, and childbirth, and everything else. And Frank Saxon, who moved in there, was a Confederate hero. He was part of the KKK. It was one of the first drive-by shootings there. I've seen a lot of spirits in this place, and I have communicated with some of them. I've actually gotten them angry at me. And I was scratched. I had a scratch down my chest, and I had a handprint on my shirt. And it's a really interesting place. And if you get a chance to look it up. As MAY-Stringer is one of the best ways to look it up. But it's a really interesting place, and I have had a lot of stuff happen to me there. Yeah.
Well, we continue to interpret in different ways. In my opinion, I've had physical encounters with things like this, and I don't believe that anything that doesn't have a body can give you scratches and do all this stuff and talk to you and all this business. I think there's a physical component there. Just probably time for one more question. On the matter of EVPs or electronic voice phenomena, that's all the rage now and among the hobbyists with this. And I don't quite know what to think about it. Have you obtained? Do you set about to obtain these EVPs on recording devices? And if so, what do you get, and how do you know it's legit and all this?
Well, some of it I was by myself, and what I would do is I would leave my recorder in and I'd walk away. I try to be very quiet. Once in a blue moon, have I ever received anything where it actually communicated back to me and answered my questions. That's only happened one time. But I have picked up a lot of weird things, and when I had some other questionable things happen at my mom's house, I put an EVP recorder in there, and I caught some pretty interesting things. One of them said, "Are you having any luck?" Like it was taunting me, and the other one, it was like this. It sounded like a cat was being murdered, but I never heard anything throughout the night. I mean, if you heard what this thing sounded like, it would send chills up your spine because it just was not natural.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jason, that's just about all the time we have. Thank you for a very interesting conversation, a lot of food for thought. Again, we interpret things differently, but, what are you going to do? We just don't know for sure. As our show says, everything you know is wrong. So there we are. But again, the book, Haunted Soul, A True Story of One Man's Struggle with the Paranormal, DowdStudios.com. Check it out. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay. All right. Jason Dowd, everybody. Now, we suggest checking out our website, BehindTheParanormal.com. You can find out about Ben and myself. You can find out about guests, past, present, and future. And there are over 450 free podcasts. And you can help keep them free by buying my books on that site. I've written a number of books on this subject, and you can get them there. And you could also subscribe to our sometime newsletter. It's real late this time, comes out once in a while, but you can get it by subscribing there, or you can apply to become a reporter for the show. Okay. Many thanks to our producer this evening, Steve Bianchi. And on our April 15th show next week, Ben will be back with us. He has no classes because it's a holiday in Massachusetts. And he'll be here to help us with an open line show in which we will deal with a very important subject we've been getting a lot of emails on lately, and that is suicide. Very serious matter. We had scheduled a show on zombies with Dr. Wendy James, but we're going to bump that to later in the month, so stick with us for a show with some very important information on this terrible subject of suicide. I've actually researched zombies in Haiti, so we'll see what we have to say. Okay, we're just about done here. Check out our CBS show on April 14th in 4 cities, and we're out of time pretty much, but I'll give you the quote. Leave you this evening with one from that old sweetie Albert Einstein. It would be better if you begin to teach others only after you yourself have learned something. See you next week.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.